The rain on the Whitmore estate. The rain came down in heavy sheets, drenching the earth and turning the grand lawns of the Whitmore estate into slick patches of mud. The mansion itself stood tall and intimidating, its cream-colored walls and tall windows glowing faintly against the storm-dark sky. It was a symbol of wealth, of privilege, of a life most people could only dream of. But just outside that mansion, beneath the shadow of a sprawling oak tree, an elderly couple sat slumped together in the storm. Their clothes were soaked through, their gray hair plastered to their faces, and their weary eyes closed in exhaustion. They had nothing left but each other, and even that seemed fragile beneath the relentless downpour. It was then that Alexander Whitmore, the millionaire who owned the estate, stepped out of his sleek black sedan. He froze mid-step, his polished shoes splashing in a shallow puddle as his gaze locked on the sight before him. An elderly man and woman, fragile with age, collapsed in the rain. At their side, a battered suitcase had spilled open, scattering faded photographs and tattered letters across the wet grass. The storm washed over those relics of another life, threatening to erase them completely. Alexander's chest tightened. For all his fortune, he had never been confronted so directly with the raw face of human struggle. Whispers from the suitcase. The man leaned against the tree as though it were the only thing keeping him upright. The woman rested her head on his shoulder, her lips parted as though words had abandoned her long ago. And yet, even in their weakness, their hands were still clasped tightly together, trembling but unbroken. Alexander's gaze fell again on the scattered suitcase. A black and white photograph of the couple in their youth. A stack of letters, edges curled from decades of handling, love notes, perhaps, or desperate messages from children long gone. A threadbare blanket, soaked and useless now. These weren't beggars. These were people who had once dreamed, once loved, once built a life together. And now they had been reduced to this. Alexander prided himself on being self-made, a man who carved an empire from nothing through hard deals, relentless work, and an iron will. That determination had hardened him, made it easy to look past suffering if it didn't touch him directly. But this was different. Suffering wasn't across town or on a newspaper page. It was sitting in his front yard. A memory stirred in him, sharp and unwelcome. He remembered hunger. He remembered his mother working long nights and his father collapsing after endless shift. He remembered what it felt like to stand on the edge of nothing, one step from breaking. And he realized, in painful clarity, that this couple could have been his parents, had fate tilted differently. A choice in the rain. The storm grew heavier, but Alexander finally moved. Dropping his umbrella, letting his expensive suit soak through, he crouched beside the couple. "Sir? Ma'am?" His voice cracked as he spoke. The man stirred faintly, blinking in confusion. The woman's grip tightened around his hand, her fear clear even in silence. Alexander turned sharply toward his staff, waving them forward. Blankets, hot drinks. Now. His once pristine driveway became the site of a rescue. With careful strength, Alexander lifted them to their feet, his arms steadying their fragile frames. Step by step, he led them inside. And for the first time in years, Alexander Whitmore understood what his wealth was truly for. Martha and Henry. Inside the mansion's warm glow, life slowly returned to the couple. Their names were Martha and Henry. They had lost their modest home after falling behind on payments. Their children had long since moved away and never looked back. With nowhere else to go, they had wandered until their bodies finally gave out, right at Alexander's gates. As they spoke, Alexander listened in silence. Their story tore at him. He thought of his estranged brother, the one he hadn't spoken to in years after fighting over their parents' inheritance. He thought of the birthdays and family dinners he had missed for business deals. Martha and Henry weren't just victims of misfortune. They were a warning of what happens when bonds of love are neglected. Over the next days, Alexander made sure they had everything. Doctors visited. Fresh clothes replaced the rags. Warm meals filled their stomach. And slowly dignity returned. Martha's tired eyes shone with gratitude each time she smiled. Henry's voice grew steadier as he spoke of days when he had been strong, when he had provided for his family. But it wasn't just Henry and Martha who were changing. It was Alexander too. A different kind of fortune. The more time he spent with them, the more he felt something inside him shift. His hardened layers began to peel away. He started spending less time locked in his office and more time sitting with them, listening to their stories, learning from their resilience. In their presence, he rediscovered something he had lost long ago, the value of compassion over ambition, of human connection over material gain. When Henry and Martha had regained their strength, Alexander surprised them with keys to a small cottage he had purchased nearby. It wasn't grand, but it was theirs. A safe, warm place to belong again. Martha's hands trembled as she whispered, "Thank you," her voice breaking with emotion. Henry's hand rested on Alexander's shoulder, his eyes brimming with tears that said more than words ever could. As Alexander walked back to his mansion, the storm had passed. Sunlight streamed across the wet lawns, golden and gentle. And for the first time in years, he felt something stir in his heart that no fortune had ever bought him: peace. Closing call. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps spread stories that remind us of the power of kindness and second chances. Before you go, I'd love to know, what's one act of kindness someone once showed you that you'll never forget? Share it in the comments below, because your story might inspire someone else's.